Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah with the Midwest Writing Center, and I am super excited today to introduce you to Jeffery Wolf, who is a short story writer and an instructor at Columbia College Chicago. He's also a really cool person who I am excited that I got to spend some time with when he had he won the Great River Writers Retreat for 2021. We got to meet while he was here in the area doing that, and had more to say about how great you are, but first, before I actually introduce you to our friends out there in the ether, I'm gonna tell those joining us at home format of the show. I will interview Jeff, and we will talk wonderful things about short story writing, maybe a little bit about how cool Chicago is. And then I'll give you updates on what's up at the Midwest Writing Center. I managed to fail to bring my calendar with me, so that'll be a gamble. And then we'll have a 5-minute free write. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. I am out of breath, so it's your turn to introduce yourself. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think well, thank you, Sarah. It was a lovely introduction. I was blushing off camera, so it's all good. You stayed away from me for a long time.
Great, perfect. Okay, so I already mentioned you were a winner of the Great River Writers Retreat. Congrats on that. It was wonderful to have you. Can you tell me about the project you were working on while you were here?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm working on a collection of short stories right now. It's interconnected stories that will come together in some way to be determined, but it's a project inspired by my own family history. It's generational. The Jewish side of my family based in Chicago, so I've been doing research for it for a while and writing individual stories that, like I said, I will put together into a book in some capacity. And so I was working on one of the longer pieces, about a 15-pager at the retreat. So yeah, it was great to be able to do that and keep this moving along. So I was very excited for that.
So I've read very few books that are in that same vein, where they're like a string of vignettes rather than a novel, or maybe a novel in story form, but a lot of chunks are missing. So I'll say I would put in that category Adverbs by Daniel Handler, which I don't even know if that's accurate, so much as many of the characters share names and locations, but are maybe not the same characters, and the stories maybe aren't connected. It's a wild and wonderful book. Or there's Some of Tim's Stories. That's the name of the book. Some of Tim's Stories by S.E. Hinton. That's like that. Where'd you get the idea?
Well, I mean, my muse and inspiration has for a long time been the works of Peter Orner, who's got a collection, Esther Stories, that does kind of similar to what I'm doing. And his novels also work in that sort of capacity. So I think that it's sort of a blurry area between what is a collection and what is a novel when it comes to that sort of stuff. But and Orner took a lot of inspiration from Isaac Babel, his Red Cavalry, which a lot of story writers sort of look back on. Esther Stories was sort of like Peter's attempt to write Red Cavalry with his family from Highland Park. And Dennis Johnson has said that writing Jesus' Son was, his sort of attempt at writing Red Cavalry. Yeah. But yeah, it different though. I mean, Johnson's, I'm trying to think if it's maybe like 12 or 13 stories in Jesus' Son. Generally, I mean, he has some shorter stories, but most of them are on the longer side. Whereas the stuff that I write is pretty short, and I need to get better at writing the longer stories because there are going to need to be a couple of them for this project to work. But yeah, the sort of the vignette length, I guess that you could call it, is it's just where I feel the most comfortable. And I think there is, I don't know, a sort of like intensity in that, and an emphasis on image. And that's sort of, I work just image and memory, sort of a very paratactical style, where I'm sort of trying to bring the reader in with that sense of immediacy, whether it's, describing something that's present action or a memory, the sort of sense of lived experience, sort of immediate experience, I think is something that I'm going for, and that sort of works best in those bursts, where things are concise and you're in and you're out. And
I will say, I'm the exact kind of nerd who takes notes at readings. And one thing that I noticed that I made note of, and I don't have those notes in front of me because they're always on the smallest notebook that fits in my pocket, was that you use senses really, I think often, but also very effectively. I feel like a lot of the time writers focus on what is seen, which is not the most impactful sense. I remember you using maybe, I know now I wish that I had it in front of me. Definitely a scent was there. We know that smell is a super strong one. But I feel like you talked about, and this is visual, so maybe I'm off my rocker a little bit. Something about dust. I remember there being dust in a story and being like, yes, that puts me there.
yeah, and I like images too that sort of blend the senses, like a smell that invokes a color, or a sound that invokes a texture, those kinds of things. Because yeah, I mean, and especially our memories are, very much attuned to senses. I mean, they say that smell is one of the stronger ones. Probably it's one of our older senses. All the deodorant commercials are very quick to say that scent is the sense most strongest tied to memory. I don't know if that's just apocryphal or not, but yeah, so because I'm working from memory so much, and I feel like memory is sort of like, these images that we pull back vividly, and they are tied to senses. So it's sort of how I try to picture them, and also I think it's one of the best ways to invoke the experience in the reader and bring them into the story, is to make it a lived space for them in that way.
This could be just me knowing there's an association here. So this is a small aside, but what you were saying reminded me of, do you teach in the story workshop method? Is that still used at Columbia? I know that you're nodding. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm teaching an intro class, and I try to make time for workshops. I think the way, like the format that I run the workshop will depend on the class that I'm in, what the size is, how much time we have to devote to things other than workshopping. But yeah, definitely. So what was your question about workshop then?
The story workshop method that I was taught at Columbia, I was there for just a year. Not an alum, nothing fancy about me. But a lot of the take a place part of that generative exercise was very sensory, and it didn't occur to me until you were talking about the sensory in your the way you employ it, that I thought maybe they were related.
I think it's more a case of convergent evolution. Sorry, poorly timed drink of water. But I mean, I think that it is, I think it's good practice regardless. So it's not surprising that the people who've been doing it for a while at Columbia, far longer than I have, fall back on that stuff still.
Okay, so I will, thank you. I will revert to the program already planned. I was going to say the program already in progress, but that's not it. How did you do your stories when you're writing in this particular series, do they start with a sense memory, or how do you move from there? How do you get started with them? I guess I know, but our audience doesn't know necessarily what this project is, what the catalyst for this project was. So can you talk about that?
Mhm.
And then I'll ask my other question.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the catalyst is, just my own family experience, and specifically my grandfather, who passed away several starting to lose his memory, but it wasn't slipping quite that much yet. I interviewed him a couple times and just tried to get as much as I could, because his side of the family, there was a lot more drama than I would have guessed. I mean, my dad and my grandfather, both incredibly nurturing people. So my dad's dad, obviously, and my dad's brother, my uncle who lives out of town, and but it was always just them. The unit was very small, so sort of trying to discover the rest of that, and it sort of broke wide this sort of investigative sense, and then just this sense of all these characters that just started jumping off the page, and all of these scenarios, and whether joyful or traumatic, all these different things. So I guess it's sort of a roundabout way of answering your question. It can be a lot of different stimuli, a lot of different impetuses to start. And for a lot of them, I think it comes back to, okay, what is jumping off the page, right? What feels larger than life? What feels indelible, which is a word that Warner uses a lot. That, whether it is a person or a scenario, right, a specific instance, a story that's been told to me, I sort of have them all. I have just off screen here, I have a bulletin board full of note cards with different things written on them. Some are people and some are instances, and just get a sense of, okay, there's something in this, right? There's something in this that's drawing me to it. That's, it's sticking for me. It feels big. And then so I try to tease it out from there. I mean, I definitely like to start stories with images, especially something that invokes a sense of place. So I will try and have some kind of an image, and that isn't always the first thing that I have, but I try to find them eventually, whether it's during sort of a free write period, or just sort of mining the information I have for the story already. I don't always write my stories in order. I think I'm doing that more now because when they're very short like this, but sometimes those opening images don't come until after several rounds of revision. So, but yeah, the sensory stuff is always important, and grounding it in some way, in space and also in time, whether explicitly or just sort of through the kind of worldly
Context.
paraphernalia, right? The context that sort of implies that it's in a different time also.
You said something that I think about a lot. Well, you alluded to something that I think about a lot when you mentioned your note cards, which I love, by the way. Having that visual and available to you, I think, is very important. I use notebooks and then I never see them again, because they close. But it's something that in teaching and in writing myself and in learning, we talk about a lot, and it's unfortunately, I think, ineffable that we tell each other, we tell ourselves to return to this sticking point, this thing that babysitting, this thing that is keeping our attention is the thing that we need to mind, that we need to return to. But I don't think, personally, I've never been able to say, here's why, here's what you're going to get from it. I think what it is an instinct, right? Like an artistic instinct to that the art will come from the thing that you are circling. Do you?
Yeah, and I'll say too that if it's on your mind enough, you will sort of just find those opportunities. Like a lot of my favorite pieces, things that I've already finished and that I'm working on right now, wind up being ekphrastic in a certain way, where it's inspired by another work. You know, like I will read, and I think that reading generatively is huge. And it's something that I try to do as much as possible. So, you know, I'm reading, you know, or like sometimes it'll just give me the missing piece, right? The you know, working on a story about great grandpa Max when, you know, he was a teenager, you know, before he emigrated to the United States, you know, in the shtetl in Lithuania. And just this sense of, you know, there's something here with just his sort of very stiff and formal personality. You know, his father's already gone to America, and you know, just how this is going to play out. And then I was reading Osip Mandelstam, a Russian Jewish poet from around that time, and you know, came across a line that in Mandelstam that is you know, now the working title of the piece, because, and it sort of opened up this possibility into, you know, this character's mindsets, and you know, you see those connections more when you're, you know, when you're actively taking in, you know, just sort of your subconscious is sort of working through those things, right? You're thinking about these characters, and you know, they're alive in the back of your mind at all times, and you're consuming you know, generative sources, you know, good fiction, good poetry, that sort of stuff. And then, you know, the connections will happen. You know, like people think of that aha moment as this sort of like you know, this unpredictable, like, I mean, unpredictable, yes, but it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the work that you put in ahead of time. And this sort of openness of sort of being a sponge, and sometimes those things just come together. And again, I feel like I'm lucky to have had those inspirations, you know, with other writing, also with visual art, that play into and open up new possibilities for my project.
I'm sorry, I am sure that I look like I'm not paying it. There's a fly on my window, and that's what I keep looking at. I am absolutely listening to you. But I wanted to let you know. Audience can't see me. They thought I was being professional. I love, you just mentioned something that I feel really like this should be obvious, but not something I've ever heard about people doing. Like, obviously people do it, you do it. But like advice that I clearly should have had a long time ago, which is to read in the context of what you're writing. That's fantastic and honestly revelatory. Like using art as research instead of old newspapers or whatever, because that, I would say, obviously that works better with art of the time or art of the place rather than art about the time or about the place. But that's just like probably really obvious to other people, but something that I had never put together. Thank you so much. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and stuff from that time too also can help you internalize the voice, right? If you're trying to capture the voice of, you know, I don't necessarily know the experience of, being a Litvak from, the 19th century in Eastern Europe. But I can read, Lamed Shapiro and Mandelstam and people like that who did grow up in those times. And yeah, you just sort of naturally take in or Devor Baron is fantastic too. So much shtetl work from her. Shtetl, by the way, is just a sort of a Jewish, like a town, a small settlement in the country, in Eastern Europe back in the day.
I'm so glad you said that. I always try to define words when I use them, or jargon, or I don't know, Yiddish,
Right.
in context.
But anyway, it is right, like reading those writers just gives you an insight because that's the mindset of someone who was living in that time and in that culture. And especially for me, writing about the past and writing about memory, there is the danger of creating work that's a little bit out of time. Right, to you want to have a certain level of verisimilitude, otherwise the illusion is broken.
We take a lot of liberties with inferring as artists writing out of. That's so great. Ow. That's so great. Thank you so much. Okay. So you're specifically writing not about, but into, I'll say, your family. It's fiction, but it's
based on real world events.
Yeah, heavily influenced by the world around you, which I think is honestly, I know I'm getting off again, but particularly immigrant stories, right, in this country, or immigrant descendants in this country are a really special genre of their own. I think those stories often have historically, I mean, we talk about being a nation of immigrants, whatever, but those stories get sidelined because of this need to assimilate. And I think I'm really excited. I think it's going to be really healthy, and really helpful and really hopeful for folks looking to find themselves in art.
Thank you.
I know as a second gen person hearing your stories, which were not my own experiences, I felt a lot like someone out there is documenting something that I've been wanting to see. It was very much felt like finding out there was something missing when you weren't sure what was wrong. I think that's going to be really, really excellent. I'm really excited for the world to see this. I apologize for being vulnerable to your face, but
no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that what you're talking about too, I mean, I watched part of your last episode about just like finding your stories and giving yourself permission to tell your stories. And I think that especially the immigrant experience with the, with this sort of defamiliarization and the tension between, being this fish out of water and trying to hold on to what you came with and also to assimilate, right? Like those tensions are very much rife for storytelling, right? Even on a very small and domestic scale, those things have weights, and it's a very, it is big, right? If it's big in the world of the character, it's big on the page.
I think I'm going to write that down. That was really, I mean, that's worth repeating. I guess I'll change the subject a little bit. Do you find I've already said you're an instructor at a institute of higher education. Do you find, I would say ordinarily when I talk to working writers, maybe not ordinarily, but a lot of the time they don't work in the field, right? They don't work in the arts. And so there's a very different dynamic there. How do you feel teaching and working with students of literature? I guess you teach not necessarily English majors,
Yeah,
but
some of them are. I mean, it's across the board. I'm lucky to get students from across the college and to, have access to their viewpoints. But I teach comp, I teach creative writing, and I teach literature. Just sort of whatever's available at the time. I think that definitely
but
the
at an art
literature
school,
and sorry.
but at an art school,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
does
at an
add
art
to,
school, which yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely gives, I mean, there's always going to be diversity no matter what institution you're at, but it's the kind of diversity, I mean, it is a diversity not only of income and of ethnicity, but also diversity of gender, to a degree that I had never experienced before as a teacher or just really going about my everyday life. At just within the student population at Columbia. So it's it's definitely a very it's an experience that keeps you in touch with what it means to be a citizen of the world.
beautiful.
But I think that it's the creative writing and literature it definitely does help enrich my practice to a degree because it forces me to spend time with the stories. And I give in both of those types of classes. I'll give free writes inspired by pieces of literature, whether like a very short prose piece or usually with a poem. I'll do the free writes with them. So I just steal more ways to give myself writing time. Basically, I think that any writer who's really into it will tell you that you just look for any opportunity, whatever, to steal more working time. So it definitely, this type of teaching practice does dovetail with my artistic and literary ambitions. I'll put it that way.
You notice, like, do students of other media have a different approach or like a different effect on you as you go through their work or work with them?
I think that at the end of the day, writing is writing, and it's the same. I mean, um, the media will dictate certain strategic choices, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to reach someone on an emotional level, and it's about people and their experiences. So I think that it's on that level, it's all the same, and I try to, because I'm not an expert in all of these other fields, so I will sort of try to keep my comments to them sort of in that level of, all right, how are we immersing the reader slash viewer in the story, and how are we making it about the human experience.
That was really more of a personal question on my
Oh,
end
okay.
because but I tend to think or try to that art is art, and the way that we differentiate is more about us than the art itself, right? Whatever it is that comes to us is the thing that we do. And
My
I don't
students are actually really good at that too. Where like I'll give them, open-ended assignments, and sometimes they will respond to it within their field. Sometimes they'll do something totally different. Maybe they're a theater student, but this assignment they were moved to make a painting. So I mean, I think that what you're just talking about is that sort of multidisciplinary approach I see a lot from my students, and it's
That's so cool.
they're so talented. It really blows me away.
So cool. I think probably as arts education is sort of depleting, being able to see what an unrestrained or maybe I don't know, unfiltered artist can do, will do is really special. That's great. Thank you for indulging me on that one. What do you is that nope, let's go back to my notes. When you're teaching, assuming you have the freedom to design, what is your favorite like intro to creative writing project? Like if you've got, you know, some fresh minds and you want to introduce them, you want to say, this is what we do, this is how we get excited. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, which means I have to think about how I'm answering it. I mean, a lot of the times, you know, the course will dictate that you know, work with some sort of craft elements. So I try to go in that way, but I just share with them stories and poems that I love, and that I think can, you know, that they can relate their own personal experiences to. I love sharing Stuart Dybek stuff with them. Dybek just gets what it's like. He's a Chicago native too. Obviously, I teach here in Chicago, and his, you know, his stuff, it's just, you know, captures the essence of what it's like to grow up in a world and sort of like to dream at the same time and to still be able to access that. So, you know, whether it's a story like Pet Milk or Cordoba, I love showing those. And just and like to, you know, I in the creative writing classes, we'll talk craft a little more with that, but it just to, even before we get into the nuts and bolts, just like, okay, what was it that left an impression on you from this piece, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, I tell them all the time that there are no actual rules to creative writing. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's guidelines, not rules. It's just guidelines that people can tell you all of these things that you should or shouldn't do. And that's just a solution, right? The only thing you really have to do is to keep your reader engaged in the story, make them feel something along the way. And there are ways of doing that that break every convention in the book. But as a reader, right, we know when something hits us a certain way. So I like to ground the discussions in that. Even when we're talking about particular craft elements, right? Like, okay, what, you know, what did you take away from this? What did you remember? What really hit you from this piece? And get it going there. And oftentimes it is just things that they relate back to their own life. They're always sort of inserting themselves in the story, right? It's
Which is normal.
sort of, yeah, exactly. And you know, and the sign of, you know, of a good piece of literature, right, is that it's speaking to someone in whatever moment that they're in, that they can relate to it, you know, no matter if they're,
it's human,
you know, 19 or 99. So it was a long-winded, hopefully I sort of talked my way out of actually answering that question.
No, it was well, it was good for me. I managed to skip this question early on. I'm crossing off my questions, but you and I talked when you were here about short form versus long form, and you said short form is just what comes naturally to you. Have you attempted long form? Because your stories are connected, right? At least in this project. Have you attempted long form? Have you attempted to like make it linear, or is it just
I have
you
not
let
with
the
this
muse act like
project.
it will?
Sorry, not with this project necessarily, but with previous projects. Yeah. I mean, I definitely have. They've got to be around here somewhere. Those crappy novels that I started, you know, 10 or so years ago or longer. But I think that my, you know, I mean, like as sort of like an episodic sense, I sort of naturally have. And I think that when I try to write longer form, I have a tendency to get lost in the sort of plot of a thing rather than in the experience and in the beauty of the language, which is where I think I feel where my writing resonates the most, at least how I feel it. And I think that, yeah, the work that I produce that I'm really the most proud of is something that lingers a little bit more and is based in these images and the sort of stacking of images, rather than something that, you know, paces its way through a bunch of words and thoughts, or sorry, of actions and thoughts, sort of nonstop. So it's, you know, I think that the things that I've written that way, you know, can, you know, turn into something, but I have to go back and tear them apart and put them back together again in a way that is probably more, I don't know, more aligns a little more with how I know that I see the world through my writing.
I've seen a lot of this stuff online, like in meme or comic form, where people say that like you're either an outliner who knows their whole plot from jump, or you just write. And I have never, like, I've had ideas of plots and I've written into them, and maybe accomplished like the rising action, falling action thing. But I truly couldn't, probably to save my life, be able to make an outline. And I wonder if that's a major difference in long form and short form, where in short form, like you're writing an event or an idea. Try not to get too strict here. Where in
And
long
I think
form,
that also with outlining, I think you can always tell when a short story is outlined, or at least with a lot of my early short stories, I can definitely tell when they're outlined to a certain point, because I think that there's a level of spontaneity and discovery, especially like with the way a story ends, right? Like if you think you already know what's going to happen, you know, 3 scenes down, you lose the ability to discover something new in the earlier scenes, and the story can take a completely different direction. I mean, I actually think that I'm kind of in the middle between sort of blindly writing and outlining. I do a lot of pre-writing, and so I will, you know, I'll just, you know, free write images, scenes, and things always come to me out of order, or at least they seem to, and I'll write the same idea multiple times and get, you know, different angles on it, and then, you know, try to splice it together and then start over again. I'm just the messiest writer. You have no idea. But I think that I try to right, not plan everything, because I know that I have to discover some of it as I'm writing. And I try to, you know, with the end, I mean, especially with like some of these stories where, you know, I'm writing a story that has been told, a version of a story that has been told. So I know more or less what happens, but for the sake of the story, that it has to, right, it has to go to a point where, right, there is sort of a sort of a sense of fullness, and also of I don't know, of infinity, right, of in wherever it ends, and something that, you know, resonates with the rest of the story. So I if I think I know where it ends, I try to write past that or stop before it, or you know, something like that. And when I'm writing longer stories too, will often, you know, create different scenes or crots within that I'll write out of order. Did you get the fly? Yeah, nice work.
sorry.
You know, where I and then, sometimes I can put things together, and, what I thought was, went together in one order, but actually it goes in a different order, which is, I think, something that writers should be open to doing. Alice Munro, I think, was a writer who was willing to tell a story in any order. And she famously would just open a book in the middle and start reading. The idea sort of being that, you can pick up at any point and carry it to any point. And I think you can see that in her work, because she's very, the material that she writes is this sort of domestic intrigue, but she is just wildly inventive with form and structure and the shape of her stories. That's, will start at all different points and carry through to all different points, and back up and move forward. And I don't necessarily read a lot of Munro sort of in my own generative work, but I do every once in a while try to just to remind myself that, that you can make
Time
it
is a
into
flat
whatever shape.
circle.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever shape that works for you.
I do really appreciate deviation from the expected, particularly with time. My favorite era of art, at least I think my favorite era of art, is modernism, in which time is like the thing they play with. So I'm glad that you mentioned Alice Munro for that reason. But also, like, I think it's very important for everyone, like for our brains to be surprised, which is also, I think, a really important thing about what you said, and something that I was hoping to reiterate is, like, even if you know your plot, even if you have it planned out, it's really, really important as an artist of any medium to be willing to be flexible, to be willing to be surprised. I'm really, really happy you said that. That's
And
really
I think that the instinct that you need to develop as an artist is that sometimes the thing that you're clinging to the most is the thing that's keeping the story from taking that next step. So it's like, we all fall in love with our first drafts, or, we fall in love with the things that we make. But to have some distance and understand that, that sometimes you have to let go of the stuff that feels really good to get to the great stuff that can, the stuff that really sort of explodes after that.
That's advice that I find myself giving students often. It's not so much kill your darlings, but you are really going to need to take the time or whatever it is that you need to take to be able to step back from your work, to see it maybe not objectively, but as an outsider, to figure out what's really the right move for it. We're getting close to time, so I'm going to ask you my very favorite question. Why do you write?
Oh boy. I feel like I just kind of have to. I don't know if that's sort of a stock answer,
That's my
but
answer. But no, nobody ever says that, actually.
Yeah, I just have to. My life would feel very incomplete without it. I will definitely, like, my mood on any given day is, in probably an unhealthy way, tied to how much writing I've gotten done that morning, or, how, if I feel that I've written something good that morning, or, if I feel that I've, that I slacked off and didn't get enough done, or just was spinning my wheels, I really, it affects my mood for the rest of the day, which is not a good thing. I think that, if my therapist is watching this, yes, Greg, I know it's not, I'm not my art, but
your worth is not your productivity.
Right, exactly. But I think that's, having just the need to express yourself in some way. And I definitely feel, you know, when I'm not doing that, I feel very incomplete. So it's just something I need to do.
I have, and I say this all the time, I've managed to forgive myself of like more specific obligations in regard to writing with the David Collins advice of do one thing every day to further your writing. That's been really helpful to me for like not hating myself. That's positive.
Mhm.
That's positive. Do you love writing?
Yeah, I do. Some days, I mean, I think love and like are two different things. There are days when
Absolutely.
there are days when I don't particularly like it, but it's something, I mean, you know, it's one of those true loves that you have to work at that relationship every day in order for it to be something worthwhile, right? It is a long-term goal type of thing, right? There's no shortcut to writing. And as much as I would like there to be some days, but yeah, so yeah, I do love it. And I think that you know, I'm at a stage now where I'm, you know, I feel like I'm starting to feel it loving me back a little bit, you know, feeling like a little rewarded for the time, which is just a reminder that to keep working. So
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's I followed up every once in a while when you ask someone why they write, they will talk about how they hate writing, and it makes me really sad. But also I think it's really interesting, maybe a little too psychologically revealing, but it's interesting the difference in mentality for writers, not even just artists, but like this is a really small section of cats being locked out of the house, out of the room, not out of the house. Where, you know, the compulsion is that powerful, or like the self evaluation, right? Of like the quality of the work or whatever makes it complicated for a lot of people. I too, I write because I have to. But I would also say that I love it, and maybe I love it because I have to, but
well, it's a part of yourself, and you know, you have to love yourself, so it means you have to love writing.
it's okay for things to be hard and also good.
Mhm.
Now we're getting just too psychologically revealing and very close to time. So I'm going to switch gears. I want to thank you in case you run away before I'm done. So much for doing this with me. I have not asked all of my questions, which is exciting. That means that I was having a good time riffing. I'm so excited to have met you, to be able to look forward to seeing more of your work in the world, and to introduce you to those of the MWC community who didn't come to your reading. For those interested in seeing Jeff's reading, that's on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Midwest Writing Center, and you can find it. It is titled Great River Writers Retreat Reading. That features, oh no, I don't remember her pseudonym.
Ivy Joe.
Thank you.
Ivy Joe Young.
Thank you. That features Jeff Wolf and Ivy Jo Young. Very, very different writers, both very talented at what they do. We're totally honored to have been able to host them, and obviously super grateful to Dr. Shamas for making that happen. But also, like, go watch that video and then come back to this one and see what you can learn from him.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I'm honored to be here. I really enjoyed this chat. So thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're ever like, you know what I would like to do today, let's record an interview about why I write. Then please let me know and we will do that. I will now do upcoming events at the Midwest Writing Center, but not a lot of them because, like I said, I forgot my calendar, something that I managed to do twice a week, every week. This weekend, that would be October 8th, we will be at the Iowa City Book Festival Book Fair. I don't remember the hours for that, but it is daytime hours. And then we will also, we have more than one staff member to make this possible, be at the Quad City Youth Art Showcase from 4 to 9 p.m. at Schwiebert Park in Rock Island. That'll be artists of all media, sponsored primarily by Quad City Rock Academy. So there will be a lot of musicians, but there will also be visual artists. We will have young emerging writers will take the stage at 7. This is the rain date for the event that was to happen at the end of September. We will have our brown bag lunches are returning, in which you get to sit down with an author and talk about their work, get to know them. The first one will be on October 12th with Salvatore Marici, his newest book, which I managed to also not have next to me for some reason, is Sneezing Coyotes. It's really, really beautiful. He's a super talented poet. He's been around a long time. And then he will be teaching a workshop on the 22nd on building tension in your writing, and that is not genre specific. Sal's a poet, but as I like to say, you can learn a lot as a prose writer from poets. I can attest to that myself. We'll have another brown bag lunch on the 19th with Jonathan Turner. His newest book is called 100 Things to Do in the Quad Cities Before You Die. So probably you'll get a lot of Quad City love if you come to that. This will be in the Rock Island Public Library's community room, so we can spread out and have our lunches while we have this intimate conversation without being worried about germs. And I'll report back soon with more updates from the Writing Center, since I don't know them all off the top of my head, but those are going to be really good ones. Those are all this month, and those are all really good opportunities to see some really great art. I'm going to lead now into our 5-minute free write. Jeff, you're welcome to take off if you don't want to participate. Otherwise, I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to jump when the alarm goes off, just straight out of my skin. And I'm going to say that our free write is going to be using your sense of smell and creating a scene. Now that can be whatever it means to you. It can be poetry, it can be journaling, it can be, a textbook. I would like you to think about the smell of mothballs. If you don't want a specific prompt, do whatever you feel. And I will put that timer on. Maybe. Okay, 5 minutes go. feel like my pen is super loud right now. A minute and a half left now. Okay, time's up. I caught the timer at the 1 second mark. Thank you again, Jeff, for hanging out with me today. I hope that free write was generative, and mine was going with the theme of the day, psychologically revealing. Please, as always, write more light into your life.